IndependentLeft.news.
Independent Left News.
Indie Left News.
Independent Left News.
Oh yeah, and I get news from Independent Left.
Thank you, Independent Left.news.
They actually put up posts of different shows, different things going on.
Check out Indie Left. They're doing a lot of good things. They're on Twitter and Instagram, and they've helped promote our show a lot.
Thanks for the work you do behind the scenes, too. This man does our Discord and some other help, so I just love to shout him out. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah. They kind of really do a great job of pushing.
Thank you, Independent Left, for reminding me of that.
Check out IndependentLeft.news.
IndieLeft.news.
Indie Left, shout out.
Okay, so let's start over. Welcome, Alex Rubenstein. He is a journalist first, content creator second.
Thank you.
But he is a journalist who has worked and is esteemed in our space. He's worked for everywhere that you know, RT, Sputnik, Mint Press. He's published at the Grayzone. He has a Substack, and he's got a Rokfin channel. So now I've given him a proper introduction, and you can see him, and we can actually cut all of that out when we do the live stream and the podcast. So thank you. I appreciate you telling me that. And what's up, True Love and Lady Alex? Welcome over here on the Rokfins as well as over on YouTube. So, again, Alex has worked for all these different outlets. He's also covered protests. You covered the Donald Trump, the Pussy Hat protests after Trump got elected.
I was in jail during that.
Well, that's right. You got jailed. That was my point. Like, you got arrested.
It was before the Women's March.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a really big day. Actually, it was really big 3 days. At first it was the deplorable, which was like, there was some kind of convention for like the alt-right / new right. I guess we weren't really using the term new right at the time, but a lot of those figures that have made their way into that space were there. And I can think it was kind of a weird time for the right wing because they were kind of figuring out their identity and whether or not they were down with Richard Spencer or not. But there was a big protest outside. So, I watched somebody throw an egg at Sean Hannity. That was fun. And I was up. I had all these journalists. I'm not going to say who it was because a lot of them don't even like me anymore. Because, differences over foreign policy, differences over Antifa, Black Lives Matter, that kind of stuff. But I had like 8 journalists staying. I was renting a basement apartment at the time. And so, we just lined the floors with journalists covering everything that was happening in DC. And so we had like all stayed up all night editing our footage from outside of the deplorable. And so it gets to be like, 6 a.m. and we head out to do, more coverage. And all of I don't know if you remember, but it was a big talking point against Trump at the time that, he had like an abysmal turnout at his inauguration. And really the reason for that, it wasn't because people didn't want to go. It was because every single entrance to the National Mall, which is where the inauguration was blockaded. So they had all these different groups. Because I was interviewing the organizers of all this, Disrupt J20. Leading up to it, I was very involved. Well, I wouldn't say involved. I wasn't organizing myself, but I was attuned to the organizing effort that was going on. And so we went down to the barricades and, watched all the confrontations. Alex Jones showed up. That was also a good time. I love his energy. He just like 0 to 100 and he's screaming about how like Antifa assaulted a woman. And like, I don't think that happened. But he was just like in full rage mode. And then after that, we spent a while at the barricades, I went to the Spicy March, which was anti-capitalist. And it was a black bloc, and for those people who don't know what that is, everyone dresses in black. This was like before it was really cool, but kind of pushing it into the mainstream. And they were just going around destroying Starbucks windows and bank windows and even bus stations, which I remember irritated me quite a bit at the time, because it's like, workers use these to take shelter from the elements while they're waiting for the bus because they can't afford Uber,
Right.
or whatever. So it wasn't the most ideologically sophisticated event ever. But basically at some point, and I'll tell a little story about that too, is what the organizers of Disrupt J20 had been telling everybody for months was that DC police won't kettle you, which means they won't like corral you, they won't surround you and prevent you from leaving and do a mass arrest. And the reason for that is because they actually wound up paying a lot of money when they had done that years prior. However, they did do that. So they did that, and I was working for RT America at the time, and they had booted me. Like, I'm following around this like crazy protest. There, tear gas everywhere, sting ball grenades, the works. And they had accidentally booted me off of their Periscope to go to the studio. So I'm like, what the hell, man? So I call my boss, and she's like apologizing and just said that we didn't mean to do that. Get back on Periscope. So I'm in the process of getting back on Periscope. That was Twitter's live streaming service.
Right.
It's gone now. And that's when the police surrounded everybody, and Antifa, the brilliant minds that comprise it, decided that what they were going to do was charge the barricade. So I got swept up in like this large group of people that just like charged while I'm like on my phone looking down at it. So yeah, and there's actually video of me. There's a good picture of me that Reuters took getting knocked down from behind by the cops with a baton. I was streaming at that time. The Guardian took my feed and did a little video out of that. And they pepper sprayed me like point blank. It was a mess. And I spent the next 25 hours in jail. And long story short, I did not make it to the Women's March.
Yeah, I would. Oh, jeez. Again, getting arrested for journalism. I mean, that's you got.
Yeah,
I was picture Julian behind you. So like, we are staunch advocates. Speaking of getting arrested for journalism, and for publishing. I mean, just free Julian Assange, please, everyone. Let's do that.
I was wearing an RT jacket at the time. I had my press badge, and the cop that arrested me was like, "Oh, you work for RT?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Like, why are you RT? Why are you arresting me?" And he told me that he watched his RT to like keep up to date on what's going on in protests. So I'm like, well, you've been like. And I could see on Periscope, it would give you some alerts for like who was watching, and like the DC Police Department was watching my Periscope, So yeah, they, and then they gave me a big hassle about dropping my charges. They wanted to send me to prison for 10 years. That was the charge that I got stuck with. Actually, I wasn't included in the superseding indictment, although the other 230 or so people that were arrested were, and that brought like a 62-year prison sentence based on the charges. So it was really insane. And as much as I might like criticize Antifa or Black Lives Matter, I'll always defend them from that kind of absurd, draconian, punitive measures. And it's the same reason why I've been so vocal in support, not in support, but in defense of the January 6th people, because I mean, it's crazy what happened to a speedy trial. I think that the left has been wanting to do stuff like January 6th for years and years, never got the guts to do it, and now basically can't because they've all advocated for, they've helped the FBI in a lot of ways. A lot of the main Antifa sleuth accounts on Twitter have been like, doing the FBI's job for them. I remember there was a protest maybe like 6 months ago or something like that. that was like in support of the January 6ers. It was a right-wing protest, and Antifa showed up. So they were doing the police's job for them, you know? It was totally insane. There were communist groups that were tweeting calls for sedition charges. And my mind is just totally blown by all this. I don't want to name names. I do want to name names, but I'm not going to. But you know, I think that lesson of January 20 is it really on January 6th of that year, I was already saying what was going to happen. I was exactly right, and I was already speaking out against it. So I feel like I was on the right page from the start with that, and that's because of that background that I have.
And so were you in the camp that was looking at the FBI reports prior in November and realizing that they were setting stuff up and that they were pulling Capitol Police and warning staff? No, is that what you mean? Or
no, I didn't even know about that. I haven't followed it super closely, to be honest. I've just spoken out against the absurdity, and I've caught a lot of heat for that, but I haven't done any actual like investigative journalism on that.
Yeah, I was reading Whitney Webb and TLAV prior, and they were talking about even before it was happening that they were setting up for something like this, and then they were going to work on also getting to the inauguration. And of course, everybody bulked up security, and everyone kind of backed down, and everyone knew what was going to happen. So that ended up not happening. Thankfully, I mean, look, nobody wanted to see them kind of take over the country and in the way that they wanted to. You know, if you want to prove it and you can actually get into the machines and audit and do everything else, then fine. But just to declare it is a whole other thing. So I also now I saw that you either reported on Standing Rock. Did you go up to Standing Rock also in 2016? Wow, yeah. So you were up there too, man. You have covered every lefty action. Holy shit, that's awesome.
Charlottesville. Yeah,
right?
I was a little young for Occupy. I wasn't doing journalism at that time, but I got started following around Black Lives Matter in 2014. So I mean that was really when I got started doing journalism, because I was, you know, like reading the New York Post and shit, and seeing all the lies about the protests that I was at, you know, and I started writing for some pretty obscure Italian newspaper, and you know, made a Twitter account and started just tweeting videos, and that was how I got started. And eventually a friend put in a good word for me at RT. I was a social media editor at RT. I was not a journalist. So I saved up all of my vacation time for the year, 2 weeks, and went to Standing Rock during my vacation. I used to work, you know, 7 days a week back then. I don't do that to myself anymore.
I still do that to myself, but that's okay. I appreciate that you did, and that's awesome. Holy shit. So what did you do before you started doing journalism? I was always curious. Were you...
I used to tell people I was retired. I was like 20 years old, and I'm like, yeah, I'm retired.
Nice.
No, I wash dishes, that kind of shit, you know, or didn't work at all and just was a professional bum.
Nice, you know? Nice. And what area? I'm not asking specifically what area did you grow up in. It was in the U.S. You're living in Mexico City now, right?
I'm not in Mexico City. I'm in Mexico. I'm not going to say where.
Okay.
But I am in Mexico.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, I actually, I'll tell this story because, you know, I've never told it before, but, you know, I got pretty sick of the town that I was living in when I was, 19, and I collected my paycheck from my dishwashing job. Actually, I was a fry cook at that time. And it was like $200, and I went home and I brought my backpack filled with clothes to work that day, collected my paycheck, walked across the street to the bank, cashed it in, and took a a bus, several buses, and eventually wound up in New York City with my backpack. So that was fun. No connections, nothing like that. So I was just like, you know what, my life is like really boring. I don't like it. I don't want to be a fry cook. So I decided to be a bum. And it, in the long run, it worked out for me. I was lucky that I was a guy, so I could do that sort of thing. Not have to worry about some of the things that a woman might have to. But I made friends. I got into activism, learned a lot about New York City and a lot about the world, and then slowly I made my way into journalism.
That's so like you get to New York. Were you homeless when you got to New York City?
Yeah.
What was that like? Showing up in New York with like nothing, basically, with a backpack, right?
Yeah, well, I had heard about, different groups that were activists, so I connected with people pretty quickly. It took me maybe 6 months to get off the street, which I think is pretty good. Not that long compared to, other people. I was lucky that I, wasn't, addicted to any drugs or, stuff like that. So I had wits, so I was able to leverage that, I think.
Wow. That's and
I've never told that story publicly, so that this is an exclusive for you guys.
Holy shit, that's a hell of a story. I appreciate you sharing that, man. That is pretty damn remarkable. So also, you are very outspoken, I know, in support of the Palestinian people and against the Israeli state and what's happening there. And it looks like just again this morning there was another bombing in Gaza, and it's just now you were you raised Jewish culturally? I mean, I was. Yeah. I was personally. So to be an anti-Zionist,
one of the tribesmen.
An anti-Zionist Jew, outspoken as a journalist, I give you a ton of credit, and I've been fascinated and have not really talked to too many. But go ahead.
It's easy. It's easier for Jews to do that than it is for like a Christian or especially a Muslim journalist, right? We have that shield. And yeah, like somebody says, "Oh, well, you're a self-hating Jew," and it's like, look, man, I love my family. I love all the people. All the Jews I went to Hebrew school with. Like, you're not going to get under my skin by saying I'm a self-loathing Jew. So I think it's easier for Jews to take an anti-Zionist position than. So we have to, right? Like, if we're progressives, we have to. Not that I really, use that term to self-identify, but I think that it's easier for us.
That's interesting. See, now I see it as you have more of the pressure of your family and community kind of around, and to have to deal with that pressure, which that's the other side of it. So I feel you though.
Well, I've never. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have I'm not a practicing Jew, right? I don't go to synagogue, and I'm not sure I could if I wanted to, given where I live. But I've always wondered if certain people in my family are non-communicative for a reason. You know what I mean? And that being the reason. I don't know for sure. No one's ever said anything to me. Certainly my parents I'm very fortunate that I grew up with very progressive parents, so they understand, and they're not quite on the same page, but pretty damn close. So that's very helpful. My immediate family totally gets it.
Well, you're a lot further along than me, fortunately. I come from a family that not so much gets it, and I have battles with a lot of people. It's sad to hear some of the stuff that the rhetoric, and just the fact that
I guess that would
A third are under 18. A third of Gaza's under 18, and it's like they just refuse to look at that. And it's like, guys, these are kids.
Yeah,
these are kids at this point that have had no shot for the time they were born. Where again, watch Abby Martin's documentary, and again, they don't let us as a community really see very much at all. Look, they don't let the congressional delegates that go there even go to Gaza unless it's an approved visit to an approved area with an escort. So the films that, you know, part of my awakening, again, Richard Medhurst was a large part of my awakening. I give him a ton of credit, and I consider him like a brother, even though I've only, you know, seen him on camera once or twice, but followed all his stuff, been to his streams and everything. But you know, and then of course there have been guys like Max, who you work for, and again, I had such admiration for Max and Aaron and those who do choose to speak out against their families, communities, knowing that it's going to make them a pariah and unpopular and outcast. And I've always kind of seen myself as an outsider in a way. So it's who I kind of, it shouldn't be the outsider position. So
well, I think that might be typical of our people to feel a little bit like an outsider.
Right.
But you know, now that you mention difficulties with your immediate family, I think that if I had that same experience, that would probably change my calculus on when I said that, you know, it's easier for Jewish journalists to take a stand. I said that with the privilege of coming from a very progressive family on that issue even. So you make a good point there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, like, so now the Assange, again, you worked for RT. Now, he was already in the Ecuadorian embassy when you started working there. Did he have his RT show while you were working for RT? Was that beforehand?
I don't think so.
He was already done with that?
I got hired in like late. I got hired in like late 2014. I think his show was like 2011.
And then I'm wondering, like, covering his trial, did you do much of that, or you were watching? I know obviously you were watching, and you know, we've been advocating and doing all kinds of activism for it, speaking out. But
yeah, I you know, with Assange, I haven't really covered him so much, and the reason for that is because wherever I've been working at the time when there's something to really cover with him, there's been other people that have been on it. So you know, I never tried to work at like the Intercept or like a place that you know, wasn't like really all about Assange. So there were other people that were always on it. I've written a handful of articles. Like one thing that I really laid into while I was at Mint Press was you know, they kept saying that like when he got arrested, they said that like he had smeared feces like all over the embassy, and like I debunked that. So that's like the one thing that I've done as far as journalism goes. I have done things behind the scenes that I'm not really able to talk about, but you know, working to help him. So you know, I've supported him on Twitter as much as I could, right? But I haven't really exposed anything. I mean, like, you know, we had Whitney Webb while I was at Mint Press. Of course, Max runs the Grayzone, so you know, what was I gonna do?
Right.
You know,
right. Whitney's kind of the queen. You know, to a point. You got Glenn out there. There's so many good advocates out there. Mohammed El Mazi. I got to talk to him a couple of weeks ago. He did a stream with Tara Reid, and I helped to organize that. And he's just tremendous. Again, all these guys that are carrying the torch, because it's incredibly frightening. Again, you're not located now in the U.S. If you wrote something dissident, you know, look, Commander X got remanded from Mexico. They went and scooped him up, brought him here, and locked them up for X amount of time. Like, I'm worried.
I don't know how
for
much of that
journalism.
was. I don't know too much about Commander X, so I don't want to speak about. If I'm wrong, I encourage anyone to correct me. But my understanding is that U.S. federal authorities grabbed him in Mexico, pretending to be Mexican authorities, in order to get into his gated area. So I've heard people blame AMLO for that happening, and I'm not so sure that's the case. I'm pretty sure that's not the case, especially what I know about AMLO. I know people that work in his office. I haven't asked them about that specifically. And also, the kind of defense that AMLO is giving for Julian right now.
Well,
it makes me skeptical of this idea.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say the half hour that he talked Biden's ear off about that and told him to take down the Statue of Liberty. And so you've been living there with AMLO as president, and everyone, like, what's it like to have a real leader that, like, gives a shit about the people? Because it must be different.
Well, he's got a huge amount of support. It's really amazing. I think the polls say 60%, but like that 60% is very vocal, right? Like they all have signs, they all have like little AMLO plushies. I'm not kidding. It's like he's a real icon. I don't speak Spanish so well, so it's hard for me to really get a grasp of their politics. I get a lot of it through my wife, and her family is very political. So that's helpful, but yeah, I mean, it feels like more than 60% supports him, just because those 60% are like, really enthusiastic supporters.
That almost sounds like another band of supporters that I don't want to. Yeah, but on a complete opposite end, but still fervent.
Not Brandon's. No,
not Brandon's.
The
side.
other,
No,
other guys.
I was talking about Trumpy, but just in a completely opposite way. Again, it's more like, people used to describe him as the Mexican version of Bernie, but he actually had the courage to do a lot of the things that the American Bernie did.
Yeah, right. And honestly, his way of conducting himself is actually a lot more like Trump. I loved watching Trump on TV because he'd put the journalists in his place, and AMLO does the same thing. They start asking him questions that he doesn't think is fair, and he'll call out like the people that funded their newspapers, with no problem. And so all the NGOs and all the Western press go, oh, he's attacking the free press, and it's like, no, he's talking about who pays them,
right.
And it's the same thing that Trump really did in a lot of ways. I think he's also prone to making some stupid comments too, much like Trump.
And he holds court every morning. I mean, he does those press conferences pretty much every morning and he'll just stand there and answer questions. I mean, again, can you imagine
fight with the reporters too?
Can you imagine having a leader that's happy to do that on a daily basis? And I have a friend about 2 years ago who he's Brazilian, and he was a big AMLO fan, and he's saying AMLO is el presidente del mundo, and he's one of those guys, right, that you're talking about. And so I started, he puts the links in my Discord, and I watch him in the morning, and I'm watching the way he conducts himself, and I'm watching the way that the respect that he gives to the people that he's speaking to, and I'm like, God damn, man, where did we go? What the hell happened here that we and like he's like garden variety, like there's nothing special necessarily, but he's just like treating people like human beings and looking them in the eye and not looking down, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's that, and I certainly would. I think I would appreciate that more if I was Mexican. But what I do appreciate is the open contempt he shows for the right wing press and the liberal press, because when they step out of line, he puts them in their place, and it's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, I haven't really seen.
And
him
I
do
mean
that,
that's like,
that's great.
you know, like I told you, I got into journalism when I was following around Black Lives Matter protests, and I was reading in the newspapers what they, you know, the lies that they were saying. And so, you know, nothing makes me happier. I got into journalism to like kind of be a dick to other journalists. Like, so when AMLO does it, I appreciate that.
I got into this to expose corruption and to change the narrative because I realized what was going on corporate wise.
Yeah.
And you know that's why I did it. Again, I got in 2020. You got in much earlier. Everybody's got different motivations, things that drive them, and again, I love.
Well, you know, I had progress. I don't mean to like, you know, diminish my values, but you know, I do enjoy being a bit of a bastard, you know, and messing with evil people, you know.
Well, again, your undercover work at the Freedom Summit definitely showcases that kind of thing. You know, where you went in and got all kinds of dirt and notes and asked all kinds of very innocent questions and recorded it all to be able to tell everyone, here's the dirty shit that's going on behind the scenes, while they're sitting at $5,000 a plate lunches that's being held by religious, respectable organizations that are talking about, you know, babies in China, and it's some spicy stuff. I highly encourage everyone to go back to Alex's Substack and take a look at some of the topics that were discussed in that meeting. And there were some attendees I wanted to mention. I went back and was skimming it, and I remember in the header it says that Nancy Pelosi, Mike Pompeo, and Josh Hawley were all in attendance, and given
Blinken
the whole
too.
And Blinken, right. Give it and again, Rokan, yeah. So given all of the stuff this week that happened with Taiwan and Pompeo offering to go over on Nancy's jet, again, it's just further cementing this idea of the uniparty, that they're all kind of, you know, they may not like each other. It's all theater in the end, and it's all about the wallet. It's all about defending and promoting certain interests abroad, and you know, that's really where they all end up coming together, and it's always coming together to screw the masses and global South. That's what we've seen. You also have been doing...
and it was sponsored by two different cults that believe in aliens. And I'm not just saying like you and I might say like, oh yeah, the intelligent life probably exists, probably, you know. I mean, like really like alien fearing or worshiping, depending on which one, like bona fide cults, you know, were sponsoring this event. Also all these like, you know, really fervent anti-gay far-right Christian organizations. So, you know, that was what was interesting to me, was to see. I mean, yeah, it's on one hand, it's like, yeah, Republicans and Democrats are like, you know, working to you know, undermine China or do regime change or balkanize it. But what's really interesting is that, like, here are the top people in the Democratic and Republican Party at a conference sponsored by the Church of Scientology and Falun Gong. I mean, that to me, you know, I'm pretty upset that those articles never really blew up because they didn't get any attention. You know, I've done a lot of stuff over my career that, like, you know, the Washington Post or the New York Times might like write a story about, you know. Mm-hmm. This was like radio silence from everyone. I think I did like one or two interviews about it on just like podcasts. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty disappointing to me that didn't really blow up. I thought I had this huge scandal, and I did, but you know, unless you have like 20 blue checks tweet about it, and the blue checks all fucking hate me. So, you know, besides my little circle of friends, it's really hard to, you know, make a story kind of go viral. It's, you know what? It's really interesting that you say that, because this is a topic that we've been talking about quite a bit, which is this bubble that we've been placed in digitally. Yeah. And how we've been kind of pushed out of
mainstream thought and idea, and they won't even accept it, and to the point where we're ending up on platforms like Rokfin and Rumble and Odyssey, writing on Substack and Medium and Hive blog, because and looking for outlets that will actually publish anything that challenges a corporate narrative, like an RT or a Sputnik. A TNT Radio, thank goodness for them. You know, they hired Misty earlier this year, and she loves working with them, and she can't rave enough about how they're all about freedom of speech. And what does the future look like? Again, it's looking more dystopian. That's the concern. Like, because everybody's running to Rumble, and Rumble's a Peter Thiel operation. It's like, guys, that's not where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about that, right? Like, I think that any place that you might go is gonna have issues as far as like who backs it. I have no qualms with Rumble itself. I don't. If they're gonna like take a stance against censorship, fine.
Oh yeah, we're on it. We're there. I mean, again, we're being pushed out. You know,
right.
Again, YouTube will algorithm us out to death. We can't get any play within YouTube, no matter what we do, because we don't want to put pictures of scantily clad women and use certain clickbaity names and words like destroyed and or obliterated in the titles. And there's ways to game that thing.
My favorite is eviscerate.
Eviscerate.
I love when they use that. Yeah.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
How? Okay. Are they still here? Yeah. The destroyed thing just kills me. But one of the other big narratives that they've been doing tremendous amount of censorship over is something that you've done a couple of really big articles back in early March, talking about the infiltration of the Nazis and in Azov. With regard to Ukraine and Russia, and nobody was really reporting on that nearly as much. I mean, Grayzone was one of the first that I can remember really talking about what Azov was and how influential it was, in that it was controlling their quote unquote Jewish president, right? And
well, Grayzone has been doing that since the coup in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was lucky enough to have I got a real education in international politics while I was at RT. So yeah, I already had this existing background on Ukraine. In fact, it was like one of the regions where I was the most knowledgeable of. So I had that advantage. It wasn't like I was playing catch up.
Right.
So, you know, I feel like I was able to do a handful of really good reports that changed the conversation on the left and brought over a lot of people who, you know, maybe they didn't really know much about Ukraine and said and thought, you know, Russia says they're all Nazis, but is that really true? And I was able to convince certain people that were on the fence, I think. I saw those articles, they really blew up compared to a lot of the stuff that I've done over the course of my career. So I'm very pleased with those. But like I said, I had that background. I've been following Ukraine, you know, since 2016. So maybe before that, 2015 even.
Interesting.
You know, I knew what was going on in Donbass. I knew, you know, about the Azov battalion. I knew about C-14, and I knew about, you know, all these other right sector. You know, I knew all about, you know, the coup, and so I was able to connect dots that I think were. Well, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but
no,
I'm proud of
dude. That's why you're here. That's why you're here. I want to hear it. I want to hear all about it, man, because nobody else is going to do that for you. Like not like you. They don't have the experience and to know where you did that and how. Now, one thing that I'm a big admirer. I'm a patron of the Grayzone. Big supporter and a fan. They're one of the feature publications in independent left news, and I show a lot of Max's videos and stuff. What's it like? How did you get hooked up with them? I don't. They probably have a secretive process, but what's it like to get punched by the Grayzone? Kind of like say, hey, you want to come write something over here? Like that kind of seems like it would almost be the ultimate for a lefty journalist.
Yeah. Well, I met Max. Max was a friend of mine, has been a friend of mine, and as has Anya, for a long time now. Max would come into the RT office and do interviews all the time, and I was so impressed by his appearances that, you know, I started really getting into his journalism, and, you know, and before all that, I introduced myself. You know, I saw him on TV a couple times in the studio, and I went over and talked to him a bit about Syria. I said some pretty uninformed things in our first meeting that I no longer stand by, but, you know, it was interesting. And despite that, he took me seriously, which was something that was really incredible, because I was like 22, you know, and not really, you know, knowledgeable about Syria. So for him to continue to take me seriously and really, you know, we developed a friendship, and we wound up, the first time we worked together was exposing the owner of The Intercept, Piero Midyar, and we forced him off Twitter. I don't know if people really know this, but, you know, I think we embarrassed him so much that he subtweeted us twice and then stopped tweeting. I don't know if his account is locked now, but he went a couple years of not tweeting after we wrote about him. I mean, we put out some really embarrassing information, you know, not just about like his involvement with, you know, intelligence cutouts like USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, but also about, you know, his, you know, personal life. You know, for example, him having there's a video game called Second Life, and it's I'll explain it really quick for viewers who might not be familiar, but it's like, you know, it's not really like, there's no point to the game, like you're not trying to beat the boss. It's like you just, it's like your second life. So he had an avatar on that game. It was a bald black man by the name of Kito Mandala, and there's all these screenshots that I dug up of Kito Mandala in a bondage chamber, that kind of stuff. So we put that out there, and yeah, it's really funny. It's really, I like, if you go to Mint Press News, find that article. It's because it was a 3-part series. It's the one about his reclusiveness, and you can see that we put those pictures out, and it really embarrassed him. And he started tweeting about like suing, opening up libel laws and stuff like that, and then he just went dark on Twitter. So I like to think that was us, and I don't think that's too much of a stretch.
We did,
but yeah,
actually,
so that was the.
We did a Breaking Points expose earlier this year at INN, where we started looking into some of the people and Intercept, Omidyar, because they're one of the affiliates that was announced as an affiliate partnership. And actually, your article series in Mint Press was one of the things that we referenced quite a bit in looking at some of those connections. So I'm quite familiar with what you're talking about, and I, again, highly encourage everybody to go and take a look at some of those spicy articles in Mint Press News. They are still up. Menard's great, and it is one of the uncorrupted lefty outlets out there that I highly encourage everybody to support. Independent journalism that challenges narratives, that supports Palestinian people. There aren't enough of them. And I know Lee Camp just went to go work over there with Dan Cohen. They're not doing a show, so that's good for them. And again, Alex is Mint Press, Grayzone, RT, Sputnik. How'd you get to Rokfin and doing a podcast? How did that happen?
Well, Rokfin approached me, and they wanted investigative journalism. I said I can't put investigative journalism behind a paywall, but I'll do a podcast. So we had a 6-month contract that has passed, and my co-host and I, Mila, decided that we weren't going to continue, just because unfortunately we weren't getting the numbers we wanted on Rokfin. So it's possible that, you know, in the future we're gonna continue, and Rokfin will be one of the places where we do that podcast. But it wasn't worth our time, I would say, given the numbers that we were getting. So, you know, a lot of people are asking what happened to the show, and it's been like probably 6 months since we've done it. And we've talked a lot about doing it again. She came to my wedding, and we talked about it there. We've, you know, talked about it since then. Give it some time and maybe it'll be back.
Well, again, I really enjoyed it, especially the one with Jimmy Dore. No, that was Max with Jimmy.
Max,
with Max.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. I think it was like episode 15 or I had an episode number memorized at one point, but that was I was telling everyone go watch that episode with them, and that was a great kind of intro to why should you be on Rokfin Premium, is to get stuff like that. I think they were pushing it last year when Max started his show. They got Ben with a channel, and a bunch of those guys. It was like a class of people all kind of came on at once and started doing those premium podcasts, which are good, which are great. We actually do the podcast for Friends of Indie Left. I actually put on Substack, because Substack allows you now to host and RSS and distribute out your own podcast. So so I can email it out to a list, and then distribute it out to all the different platforms as well. And then you see I'm co-streaming it out to everywhere. So if that was a way to get you guys making some money to put it out everywhere, and maybe I'd love to see it come back personally. You know, I want to see good writers.
I appreciate that
out there and creating more video
and
stuff.
I got so lucky. I got so lucky with Mila as a co-host too, because she's just, you know, brilliant.
Brilliant.
I can't say too much about her, because she's, you know, just awesome, and under recognized. So, you know, yeah, I'd like to continue the podcast again. For now, I'm trying to focus on writing. But again, we'll see. You know, keep an eye on the Twitters.
I definitely will. Now, I want to mention, you know, you mentioned a couple times you got married this year, and congratulations. I know Fee and Pasta also went to the wedding. How do you manage a relationship, a home life? Is she plugged into lefty politics? Is it a complete escape for you? How do you balance that? Because it's hard.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out, to be honest. No, and, you know, on top of that, it's, you know, we have 3 dogs. So it's, you know, it's a lot. And then it's a lot to be in a country that you're not from. It's a lot to be in a country that you don't speak the language so well. No, she's not really plugged into lefty politics. Her family is. But her not so much. It just so happens that she's got really good instincts. So, you know, we wind up on the same page about all those things, you know, when they come up. But yeah, you know, I'll say it's difficult. One thing about living in Mexico is that's difficult is not being a part of the conversation that's happening in politics at that moment. It was a lot easier for me to be on top of everything when I worked in an office, you know, and I'd go in every day and I'd sit with my coworkers and we'd talk about the news of the day and give our analysis and bounce ideas off each other. I don't have that here, so it's a little more difficult. I do have, you know, I keep some connections with people over the internet, and and then on WhatsApp and such. But it's definitely it's a very different experience covering the news remotely. You know, of course, a lot of it's remote anyways, because, you know, we're not all in Ukraine, but to not be in the United States where I'm speaking to an American audience, to not be a part of those conversations in person, you know, I'm on Twitter, so it, you know, it makes it easier, but that is a challenge. But you know, any challenge can be overcome.
Sure. And again, so I wanted to ask what you were working. It looks like the last thing you put out was about 60 days ago or so.
That was a while ago.
Yeah. So do you like?
Well, I got my residency, so that's, you know, that process is over.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What was your question? No, I've been, you know, doing things here in my personal life, but yeah, I have hopefully some stuff coming up soon. I don't want to give any spoilers, if that was your question.
You said hopefully you were going to be able to drop a couple of things here, so I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to drop. You certainly could, but the New York City story, believe me, it was a hell of a thing to drop. So I'll take that and be really, really grateful, for sure.
It's tough, man, because things move so quick, and then, you know, one moment it's Ukraine and then the next it's China, and like sometimes you're working on something so long that it's like, you know, that if you put it out when it's done, no one's gonna read it, you know, and you can see that happen. I've had articles that have even been timely and I felt like they've fallen flat. So it's a balancing act, and you really have to be quick, and sometimes I am not quick. You know, sometimes I have like, you know, 3,000 more words than I should, you know.
I'd rather be right than
in
fast.
My article.
I'd rather be right than fast. I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
At least say what I want to say rather than getting something out that, oh man, I wish I had said that, and then I go back.
But
and
that's
like,
not that's not how the media environment works, unfortunately, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm the same way, you know, but it's not made for people like us. It's made for, you know, the quick take, or at least, you know, the thing is that as independent people, we don't have this like infrastructure, you know, to be able to put something out every day. We don't have a team of editors. I have one editor, and he's a dad, and he's got like 6 other people that, you know, whose stuff he's also working on. So it's really tough, you know, to be timely. You know, when I worked at Sputnik, for example, I do 3 or 4 articles per day, you know, and that's, you know, not how I'd prefer to work, just because it doesn't really give you the time to, you know, dig in as much as you'd like to. But you know, when you have that infrastructure, that institutional backing, it really does help. So, you know, your viewers, of course, they support indie media, but I hope that they understand that you know, it's really, when you're flying solo, it's really tricky.
You bet, especially here when you don't have benefits on top of it. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, no overtime pay.
I mean, forget about the salary and everything else. Just the cost of healthcare. I mean, the cost of going everywhere. You're really dependent on your viewership, your listeners, and your supporters. Yeah. And again, we're grateful for all the people that are out there supporting it. Unfortunately, we're all poor. There's not enough millionaires out there on the left. Where are you all? Come on, guys. How do you think you got rich? It was with all of us. So, again, we're wrapping up an hour here. I really appreciate all the time that you've given. Anything you're pitching, anything, anywhere you should go. I know that I've got links to your Substack in the description, to your Patreon. Believe it or not, I found your Patreon. And then nobody go to my Patreon. No, don't give I have like money. 3. Well, I mean, if you want to give me money, do it on Substack. There you go. Okay.
But yeah, I need to take down that Patreon. I have like 3 patrons, and I never update it. So like, you know, Don't do that.
Okay, don't go to
Save your money.
Patreon. Don't go to Patreon.
Or go to Substack, you know.
Yeah, go to
But the
Substack.
thing about my Substack, and I gotta plug this, is everything's free. I don't put anything behind a paywall on Substack. I will never put my investigative journalism behind a paywall. So free email updates. If I can't publish an article in full on the Substack, I will give you a preview and a link so you can read it and use it as, you know, what it's supposedly is, a mailing list. But yeah, Substack and Twitter, that's where you can stay on top of everything that I'm doing.
That's killer, man. At real Alex Ruby, RUBI. Again, this has been Friends of Indie Left. I'm so appreciative. This is one of the I'm gonna gush over you for a minute here, and I hope you're not uncomfortable. This guy's on the All-Star team. He's one of the top 20 out there that are doing this. Gives a crap, caring, and you can see it in the writing. Again, I'm a fan, and I hope everybody subscribes. He was on Slow News Day a couple weeks ago. Go check that out with Steve, and he was on with Steve's kids, and that was a blast.
That was
right?
Funny. Oh yeah, that's how I saw it. Yeah, because you were in the comments saying, oh, "I'd love to have Alex on." I'm like, "Yeah, man, hit me up. You know, let me know."
Yeah,
that was
stuff.
A crazy show, man. I'm just like
Yes,
sitting there like dumbfounded the whole time, like, what is going on?
Oh my god! All right, man. Well, again, I'm gonna let everyone get out of here, but again, thank you so much for your time. And again, this has been Indie. This is Friends of Indie Left. This is episode 10, and I'm gonna sign off by telling everyone to always question everyone's motive.